Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Wednesday, July 8th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll be open line following the 11 o'clock news block, but it is our pleasure, as we do during the summer months, to have on a monthly basis Ottawa County Sheriff's Sergeant and Lieutenant-Designate Eric Westveer from the Marine Unit joining us on the Zoom connection. Eric, good morning and welcome back to Talk of the Town.
Good morning, Gary. Thanks for having me again.
Glad you are with us. And if you have a question for Eric, no, you don't need to get on the Zoom connection. I will not give you the password. Instead, call us at 395-1450, 395-1450. I might be a little bit early in asking this, but I'll ask it anyway. Eric, Operation Dry Water over the past weekend. Any numbers that you could give us as to not so much the success, but what was done over the past few days to try to make waterways safe in Ottawa County?
Yeah, so like we mentioned last month, it was this past weekend, and we did step up enforcement. We had every one of our patrol boats out every day of the weekend with at least 2 deputies on them. Enforcement we're starting to put numbers together now, but it was dramatically increased over the weekend. The amount of boats that we stopped and had contact with was triple, almost quadruple our typical numbers for a weekend.
Was it more drunken boating situations? Was it equipment or lack of equipment, or both in terms of what was done?
It was both. Obviously the focus of the weekend was for the intoxicated boating, but that's not all we're looking for. We're still looking for the safety violations for equipment. Make sure that you have the required stuff on there, and again, wake violations as well.
Talk about the wake violations. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, no wake right now up in the Grand Haven area, and Lake Makatawa, I think, is in that same boat or not?
So the changes that have happened recently is Pigeon Lake and Port Sheldon is completely slow no wake now. Up in the Grand Haven Spring Lake area, there have not been any changes at this point. That is still being worked on, and there's a few details to go into that yet. As far as Lake Makatawa, there were changes that were instituted this past Friday. They are effective now, and those changes are the Narrows. The area known as the Narrows on Lake Makatawa is slow no wake to all vessels now, no matter what size. And there is a 300-foot rule around the entire perimeter of Lake Makatawa, saying you cannot go above slow no wake within 300 foot of the shoreline.
When you talk about no wake, it is a case, and I'm going to be using a layman's term because I'm not a boater. It depends on the size of the boat as to how much of a wake you have, or how quickly you can go. If you have a smaller vessel, maybe you can go a little quicker. The wake is not as bad as it would be with a bigger vessel.
Yeah, your wake is, like you said, the draft of the boat, the size of the boat, the number of engines on the boat, that can all have a bearing on the size of the wake you throw at what speed. What we determine it on, and what's written in the law, is slow no wake is the slowest speed that you can go and safely navigate your boat forward.
What about the curveball in this whole thing? Personal watercraft. They create wakes sometimes just because they want to go fast.
Yeah, and they have to fall under the same rules. They have to go as slow as possible to safely navigate forward. Sometimes because their steering is controlled by power being on that jet, they do need to go a little quicker sometimes, but as long as it's the slowest, safest speed they can go.
How about not surfboarding, but water skiing? Is that a problem at times with the Pigeon Lakes, Lake Mac and Spring Lake and all that, or is that more of a case of people are going to want to do the wave surfing and all that up on Lake Michigan?
Yeah, it's not a problem. They're public waterways for everybody to use, whatever their sport of choice may be. The problem that people could relate it to would be the wake that comes off the boats and the damage it does to the shoreline. But one of the things that the DNR had to look at when we were working on these new rules is, the total compatible use of the lake. Everybody that uses the lake still has, their right to do their recreation on the lake. So is it a problem? No. That's an enjoyment that a lot of people do. We just tried with this 300-foot rule to try and get them closer to the center of the lake and away from the shoreline to try and minimize the damage.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Designate, Lieutenant-Designate Eric Westveer of the Marine Unit, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450. I can happily say, and I think a good way of saying it, we can happily say that this holiday weekend, this just past holiday weekend, it was pretty quiet on Lake Michigan. We didn't have to worry about people having issues with the rip tides, the rip currents, or the lake was playing nice this weekend. I should say that.
It was extremely busy out there at the state park, the county parks with boaters, and at least in Ottawa County here, from my unit's perspective, we had very few problems out there this past weekend, which is great for us to see.
Let's hope it stays that way, but unfortunately, the nature of Lake Michigan, it could be nice one day, and all of a sudden we got the winds coming out of the northwest or maybe even the northeast and causing issues, and
Right.
here we go again.
Exactly.
Need your comments on a couple of stories, Eric Westveer, one in Allegan County, one in Kalamazoo County. And it comes back to some of the things we've discussed about boating safety and water safety in the past. First of all, in Allegan County, a 75-year-old man drowned about 12:30 yesterday in Monterey Lake, west of Wayland. Deputies were not able to revive the man after pulling him out of the lake. And we've talked about this before with a kayaker, and especially if you're not wearing a life jacket, a flotation device, you're going to have some problems. Even if you are an older person and you can swim, it's still not good.
No, and again, I wasn't there. I don't know the details, but my understanding is that he did not have a PFD or a life jacket on at the time. And when I read that, the first thing I thought is, why not? That's the number one thing you can do in any circumstance on the water to protect yourself is to simply put on a PFD, and it's the easiest thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other story was out of Gull Lake, as a man was swimming in the lake. He was struck by a boat. It's being investigated by the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department. Doesn't say whether or not it was an evening situation or daylight situation. Boaters need to be aware, especially in the closed lake situations, that they're not the only things in the water right now.
That's exactly right. And in a situation like that where you get a swimmer, they can be hard to see. But as a boater, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're operating that vessel safely and you are aware of the hazards in the water, of swimmers in the water, of other boats in the water. And on a holiday weekend like we had, it's going to be busy out there, so you have to be even more vigilant of what's going on around.
Is that a problem maybe on the big lake, or it's not as much? Because with the big lake, especially the beaches, it's kind of easy to say, stay away from there. That's where most of your swimmers are. You don't have to worry about it as much as, say, on an enclosed lake.
Yeah, and that's what I've noticed too is, like you said, the big lake, a lot of the majority of the swimming is done along the shoreline and the boats are out a little further. We don't have a huge issue with that. There are people that swim from the boats a little further out, and you have to be cognizant of that. But the biggest issue is going to be the inland lakes, where you have the swimmers, the skiers, the tubers, the boaters, all in a smaller body of water.
Do we have that problem in the rivers or not really?
Not too bad in the rivers. It'd be more your Lake Macatawa, Spring Lake settings that you would run into some of that.
I'm just kind of wondering whether or not Grand River might be, up in the just east of the Spring Lake, Grand Haven area, where it's a little bit wider. Obviously, it's a little bit different as we get closer, further inland, further upstream. Right. It's not as bad. 395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Eric Westveer of the Marine Unit. Let's talk about boats for a minute and talk about the fact that at times people, we want to have the most modern vessels out on the road, out on the waterways, all the new fancy things, the GPSs, and have all the fun things. But there are a lot of people, and we won't see it too much this year because of COVID, but the classic, the vintage boats. And a lot of people like to have them on display in the dry land, but also they like to take them out on the water. What challenges are there with the vintage boats that maybe don't have all of the safety accoutrements that some of these newer boats have? What are some of the things that you have seen in your time with the Marine unit that you might have to pull a boat over saying, yes, a nice classic boat, but you need this, this, and this?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of them back when they were manufactured didn't have the same safety regulations and guidelines that the newer ones do, and don't have some of the equipment and electronic equipment, like you said. But what I found is most people that do have these vintage boats are very good about making sure that they do get the standard equipment on there that's required today. And we really haven't run into a whole lot of problems where they haven't had that. They realize the importance of it. They're avid boaters themselves, so they know what they're required to have and why they have to have it. And they've been very good about making sure that is done.
Is that a case more than anything else, Eric, where maybe not so much for the actual boater safety, but it's more of a case of, say, fire? Maybe making sure that these vintage boats, unfortunately, could catch fire a little bit easier than some of the newer ones.
Yeah, we, in fact, a couple of years ago, again, on Lake Mac, we had an issue with an older boat. Maybe the ventilation system or the blower systems aren't as updated or as functioning or efficient as what we see in the newer boats now. Some of these wooden boats, if we get a fire on a wooden boat, they can go up very quickly. So there are some of those issues you could run into. But again, you can have the proper fire extinguishers on there, run your ventilation systems, and do the best you can to mitigate it.
395-1450 if you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Eric Westveer. We're sort of going around a few topics today, not only about water safety and boating safety, but some of the things, and this is something that might be coming out of left field, Eric. How far out into Lake Michigan would the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department's Marine Unit go to deal with a situation? Is it like a 2-mile, 3-mile thing? Or do you go maybe to the proverbial state line midway through Lake Michigan with Wisconsin before, there might be a situation, a bigger vessel having problems right in the middle of Lake Michigan?
Yeah, so technically the county has jurisdiction up until that mark that you said, the state line, the center of Lake Michigan. That's technically our jurisdiction all the way out to that point. So if there is any issues that far out, we, along with the Coast Guard, would respond out to that area.
But it would be a little
patrols. So you see, for general patrols, we don't make it a practice or a habit to go out that far. We stay, within a mile or two of the shoreline.
Yeah, the reason why I was saying that is that more or less the middle of the lake is pretty much dealt with commercial shipping. You're not going to see the recreational vessels out that far, would you?
That's correct, yeah. The recreational ones, like we said, they're going to be closer to shore, and that's where we focus our standard patrols at as well.
Do you have to sometimes play traffic cop on a little closer to waterways between the recreational vessels and the commercial vessels? I'm thinking more, not so much Holland, because obviously we don't have as much commercial boating traffic as in the past, but maybe Grand Haven, make sure that the commercial vessels have the right to get into the dock and not have to worry about, there's a little speedboat coming around. Get this out of here.
Yeah, for the most part, they do very well up there. They know to stay away from them. But we will, if we're on patrol, and there is a ship leaving Grand Haven, we'll help escort them out, because in Grand Haven, they have to back out of the entire channel until they get to Lake Michigan, because there's no room to turn out there. So we will escort them out and help keep vessels away at that point. But generally, people do pretty well at staying away.
Yeah, you have to, direct traffic, move here, and all that.
Yep.
It's almost like the old-fashioned traffic cop in the middle of an intersection.
Exactly.
And believe it or not, and I'll just throw a road thing. I noticed this yesterday as I was doing some driving around. My neck of the woods is on the other side of the county over in Jenison, the intersection of Baldwin and Cottonwood. Right in the middle of the intersections, there's debris right in the middle. And I noticed that there's no vehicles driving over that stuff. It's almost as if you needed to put a traffic cop to direct traffic, you put it right in the middle there. Nobody's going to hit it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's 395-1450 if you have a question for Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Eric Westveer. Good morning. You are on the line with Ottawa County Sheriff's Lieutenant Eric Westveer.
Well, good morning, Mr. Stevens. Good morning, Sergeant Westveer. I was kind of curious about, they closed the Park Township Airport down here on Outreach Road in Park Township. The helicopter from the Coast Guard used to land there, and they would give people a free demonstration, a tour of the helicopter. I just wondered what you think about their closing that airport down and the effect on civilian aviation and so forth. I used to go there for the airfare in the summertime. I just was kind of curious what you think about their closing that airport down.
All right. Appreciate the call. Eric?
I don't have a whole lot to talk on the topic. I mean, it doesn't really involve my capacity, the Marine unit. To just touch on base with the Coast Guard helicopter, it will not affect any of the functions of that coming out and being used in Ottawa County on the waterways. They'll run out of the Muskegon Airport like they currently do. Within minutes, they can be down here for any search or rescue operation that's needed. As far as the airport itself, I'm not really involved in that, so I don't have a whole lot to say on that.
Okay, that does lead to an interesting angle I want to hit as to when does the Coast Guard and the state police get involved in a situation involving Ottawa County waters, most notably Lake Michigan? Do they get involved immediately, or do they have to be beckoned in by the county? Just exactly explain a little bit of that protocol.
Yeah, so whenever we get a report of a water rescue or drowning or any type of water emergency on Lake Michigan or near the connected waterways, Ottawa County Central Dispatch receives the 911 call. And at the same time that they're dispatching us, they're dispatching the fire department of the local area, and they dispatch the Coast Guard all at the exact same time. The state police gets involved a little further down the road. If we go into a recovery mode, then we will call the state police in for assistance if we believe or think that we need more personnel or more equipment for the operation. They'll come in as an assist to us for the dive operation.
And it's somewhat limited in the sense of what the state police can do and what the Coast Guard can do, or do they sort of hang with the department, the sheriff's department, especially if there's an opportunity for recovery instead of a rescue, I should say, instead of a recovery situation?
Yeah, so when you say limited, it's not limited as to what they're willing to do, it's what their job description is. So the Coast Guard does not have divers around here, so they are not involved in the dive operations. They are the surface water and air search and rescue is what their main function is going to be. And they will usually stay with us until basically we determine it's no longer a rescue and it's going to be recovery mode at this point. That's when they'll start to pull resources. Sometimes it could be 2 hours, sometimes it could be 12. It just depends on the circumstances around the incident. As far as calling the state police in when we use them, they will stay as long as we ask them. They're willing to come out and help with the dive operations until either there's a recovery or we determine otherwise.
Does Allegan get involved in this as well? So I'm talking more like, say, for the Holland Harbor situation. Would they be involved in that as well?
Yep. Again, anytime that we ask them to come up and help, it has to be a request for resources, and we do the same thing going to help them. But if we request resources, they are always willing to come up and help. In the case a couple weeks ago with the 2 incidences at Holland State Park, that Monday morning, Allegan did come up at our request and help with the operations that day as well.
Yeah, I was just talking, it's a jurisdiction thing. That was my question, because with the channel at Holland State Park and the Macatawa channel, that is pretty close to the county line. So that would be in that type of situation. What challenges, as our final question for our session today, as we get into the dog days of summer, the biggest challenges that you and other members of the Ottawa County Sheriff's Department's Marine Unit will face between now and, say, Labor Day?
Yeah. So, and we see it every summer. We come into the beginning of the summer and everyone is, get it back in our minds, water safety, boating safety. What we tend to notice is as the summer goes on, people start to get lax in some of those safety issues that we bring up, and you see less life jacket wearing. You see more people in the water when it's dangerous. that's why we like to put these refreshers out as often as we can throughout the entire summer, so we don't forget some of those safety issues.
Yeah, it's a case of awareness right off the bat, and then all of a sudden, we get a little lax, which is entirely the opposite, Eric, of what we see with the motoring public as we get from fall into winter. It's like we have to get our first snow in to get our winter driving habits clicking back in. So it's like the opposite of that.
It is exactly right.
With that, we're going to button up this edition of the WHTC Talk of the Town this half hour with Ottawa County Sheriff's Sergeant Eric Westveer. As always, we appreciate your time briefing us on some of the safety aspects of being in the water. It's fun to be in the water, but it's also a responsibility. We need to stay safe for ourselves and stay safe for our loved ones. Eric, we wish you and everyone well. Safe month ahead. We look forward to chatting with you in August.
All right, we'll see you then.
Thank you very much. That's Ottawa County Sheriff Sergeant Eric Westveer on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Coming up, we have CBS News with Steve Kathan, followed by WHTC News with Peg McNichol, and then we'll have some open line time before the WHTC Midday Report at the bottom of the hour.